Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Olena, aka Expat Chick. Today is going to be a little bit different. I am going to spend all day eating Korean noodles, and I thought it would be a great idea to kind of go over my experience flying into Korea, because you know, during COVID everything is just so different, and it was such a unique experience flying into the airport in South Korea. I have flown a few times during COVID and the experience is completely different here. Okay, let's try this. First impressions. It has like a peppery and a smoky flavor. Those are the first two flavors that stand out to me. Very peppery, smoky, of course salty like any ramen. So I wasn't exactly sure when I would arrive into Korea, because during COVID, everything takes so much longer. The visa process took a lot longer than we thought it would take. I believe I got hired October 14th, somewhere around there, like mid-October. And from the day that I got hired until the day that I hopped into a plane, it was more than a month and a half. A month and a half may not seem like it's a very long time, but from what I've heard in the past, it takes like 3 weeks usually. From the day that you get hired until you get your visa and hop on a plane. My school didn't want to buy any plane tickets until I had my passport in hand. And from when the consulate received my passport until it was in my hand, it was about 3 weeks. So I guess that would have been the longest part of waiting to go. So I got my passport on a Friday, they bought the ticket that day, and then I flew out the Tuesday after. So they bought my plane ticket, like 4 or 5 days before I flew out. I thought that I would be on a plane like the very beginning of November. And of course it didn't happen. But you know, the good part of that is that I didn't miss my sister's birthday, and I got to spend Thanksgiving with my family. So that was like a good thing that happened. My flight was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 7:20 a.m. flying from Gulfport, Mississippi. And then I had about a 2-hour layover in Atlanta before I got onto my flight into Seoul. So the whole trip was about 19 hours long. I would guess about 15 and a half hours of that was spent flying directly from Atlanta to South Korea. The plane, I would say, was maybe 1/4, maybe 1/5 full. There was definitely like so much free space. I had the entire row to myself, which is about 9 seats, divided into 3 columns. And I was able to kind of spread out, you know, raise the arms, spread out, and sleep as if I was like on a futon. But of course, with like flying, at least for me, I can't sleep when I'm flying. So it was a very long trip. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in the flight because we didn't get much food. We got a meal at the beginning of the flight, and then we got a meal at the end of the flight with like 2 rounds of them passing around snacks, and they're like these shrimp snacks that just melt in your mouth, so it wasn't filling at all. So I was pretty hungry, and I'm very, very lucky that I brought snacks with me to eat during the flight. One thing that I found interesting is that there was only, from what I saw, only 2 non-Koreans on the entire flight. I thought that it would be more full with foreigners because there's so many foreigners that live in South Korea. Like, for example, I looked it up online and it was 170,000 Americans, and that's just Americans. So I was a little bit surprised not to see more foreigners on the flight. One of them was a declaration form. Another one was just like a card where you put in your physical address and a phone number to contact you by. Another one was your health declaration form where you wrote in your symptoms during the flight. And I'm sure there was another form, but I just don't remember it. There was just so much happening during that trip. So we land at the airport, and when we get off, there's arrows throughout the entire airport leading you to different stations. A good comparison for that would be, for example, like, I remember when you were in PE and they had like different stations for different exercises that you had to do, and you rotate throughout the stations. This is what it reminded me at the airport in Seoul. There was many different stations that every passenger had to go through in order to exit the airport, and there was so much staff. Like, I'm pretty sure that they had to hire a ton of new staff just to walk people through the process of arriving in Korea. I was really impressed with how organized everything was. Everything was very, very organized. And it was just very smooth, very professional, and the staff were very, very polite, which was highly appreciated after a really, really long trip. I think this is a good stopping point for my breakfast noodles. So I'll continue my journey for lunch. All right, everyone, so I am back for lunchtime. It is about 3 o'clock now. I spent the last 4 hours talking. So let's see how this tastes. This is great. Look at that. Mmm. Mmm. Really nice. Really, really nice. I gotta love MSG. I'm pretty sure there's MSG in this, which is why it's so delicious. Moving on to our chit chat. So where we left off is I arrive at the airport, right? It is a very, very long process. It took me 4 hours to get out of Seoul. But I was just very, very impressed with just how organized everything was. There was so much staff, so many people guiding you every step of the way. And the time, you know, went by pretty quickly because there was just a lot going on. And, you know, even with the thousands of people that are flying into Seoul every day, it never felt crowded. It never felt there was too many people. It never felt like anybody was overwhelmed or any of the staff was overwhelmed with so many people coming in and needing to be led from station to station. So the first thing that happened was, I think we were first led to speak to an agent about our visa status as well as where we will be quarantining. So I had to present my long-term visa, which is the E2 visa. It's specifically for foreign English teachers in South Korea, and it lasts for 13 months. So because it is a long-term visa, I am able to self-isolate in a private residence rather than going to a government-mandated hotel. Anyone coming in as basically a tourist or maybe other short-term visas, they have to quarantine in a government-mandated hotel at their own expense. And I think it's around $1,700 for the 14 days, and that covers your food as well as your accommodations at the hotel. All right, so after talking to an agent about my location and my visa, I believe after that I was led to an area where we had to install the self-quarantine app. This app, every single person that is quarantining has to use, and it tracks your location basically 24/7. It does drain your battery, so you have to keep your phone charged often. If it dies, it might cause you problems. For example, like everybody's experience is different because everyone coming in is gonna have a health worker or a staff that is responsible for their quarantine, and they keep up with them via the app, and they can see their location any time of the day. And if your phone is off, that's a problem because then they can't know your location. They don't know, maybe you've left the house, maybe you've broken quarantine. And my phone actually turned off for 20 minutes one day, and the health staff called my boss freaking out. Where is she? Her phone's off. So my boss and his son, the son speaks English, they rushed over to my apartment asking me, where have you been? Have you left? Yeah, it was just like a really big deal. So it's very important that you keep the app on. So they teach you how to use the app, and you have to report twice a day. You have to report your symptoms as well as your temperature, and they give you the thermometer for that. After that station, I'm led to another station. There's about like 7 or 8 windows, different windows that the passenger can go to, and they talk to a staff, and the staff calls the phone number that you provided of the person responsible for you and your quarantine while in South Korea, and they have to confirm your quarantine location. So they did call. They use those old school phones, you know, that are like the landlines, and they call right in front of you and check to make sure that the information that you provided is correct. After that, you are then led to another agent who again checks your visa status information and makes sure you have all the correct documents to be able to self-quarantine. And she or he, they give you documents that basically authorize you to self-quarantine. You also have to sign a couple of documents. You have to sign some documents giving them permission to, I'm guessing, to use your location and that you will comply with the quarantine. I have seen a few news articles and stories of people not respecting the quarantine and being deported. Yes, people are being deported, and they tell you that. So it's not a surprise. So after speaking with the agent, signing some papers, you are then led to your last stop, which is passport control. That's business as usual. Then I headed to the baggage claim. What I noticed is a lot of bags ended up having these like really huge, they remind me of, you know, like in clothing stores, some clothing, they will have some tags. And then when you buy the clothing, they take off that tag, right? It's kind of big, bulky, electronic alarm tag. So they had something like this, but way bigger and way louder. They actually made a really loud beeping noise on some bags. My bag, one of them, ended up having one of those alarms. So I had to go to a declaration station to where they can look through the bag, and what set off the alarm was actually a portable speaker. Go figure. One thing that I found really interesting is at the airport, I've been asked several times by staff whether I am Army or military. So there's like a whole separate section of the airport for military where they check like all your bags. I found that to be very interesting just how big of a presence the US military has here. After my bag got checked through the declaration, I then exited the like restricted area at the airport and arrived at the front of the airport. And there was a lot of agents asking people, how are you going to get your transportation? Where are you going to? So I said, I'm going to Busan. And they told me what I need to do. I need to take the speed train. And there was a very specific area for people taking the speed train. And there was an area that had already had many chairs for people, I guess, waiting. But they had divided those chairs into different sections, I'm guessing based on the location that you'll be traveling to in that train. For me, I had just enough time to get a SIM card and use the bathroom. And then we were led to a different part of the airport. We had to like take an escalator downstairs with all of our bags. And then we were led to kind of a waiting section, and we waited for maybe 20 minutes right before a bus came, and the bus took us to the train station. At that point, I had to get rid of my poor cart, so I had to carry 2 suitcases, each suitcase weighing 60 to 65 pounds. A backpack on my back weighing maybe 30 pounds or 35 pounds, and then a bag on my shoulder weighing probably 15 to 20 pounds. It was a lot of weight for me to carry it as one person, but I'm moving, you know, like I'm moving everything that I have to a whole new country. But it was very hard to carry all of that stuff by myself. And then I went all the way to the very back of the bus and I sat there. So that was basically a shuttle that takes people from the airport to the train station. Then when you get off the shuttle, you have to lug all of your luggage with you by yourself. It was just a lot. It's hard. And I waited in line. I waited in a long line of passengers to buy my ticket. It was about $60 for the ticket from Seoul to Busan. And then I went into the waiting area. Another agent spoke to me yet again, asking me where I'm going. And then I had to wait, and they explained to me how to read the ticket, which was really helpful. So I waited about an hour for the train to arrive. And again, there is staff leading the groups of people to the train. Because people arriving from the airport, we were only allowed to sit in 2 cars on the entire train. And they split us in half. And then we just waited maybe 15 minutes before the train arrived. And then we got onto the train. And it was such a struggle because I had to pull my giant heavy bags up like into the train and then drag them through the aisles. Yeah, it was just very interesting. It was all Koreans coming in. There was not many foreigners coming in. So the train ride was about 2.5 hours. So once the Busan was the very last stop on that train line. So when we got off the train line, they split the group of arrivals into 2 groups. One is for people who have a private car picking them up, and another is a group of people who will need to take taxis. And of course, there are designated taxis just for arrivals into Korea. I just want to say I'm just so impressed with how gracefully Korea has handled travelers. You know, the borders never closed, and there was never a quarantine here. So I'm just really impressed. Then we have to lug our baggage again from the train station to a health center. It's about a block away. And at the health center, you know, they split our line into 2. We had to put all our bags against the wall, and they sprayed down all the bags with sanitizer. And might I add, every staff that I've encountered from the time that I got off the plane until my boss picked me up, they were all wearing like full-on bodysuits. Full-on bodysuits. I'm just so impressed with how well everything has gone. So I have to fill in information about where I will be quarantining and the phone number of the contact. When I wait in line, I filled out some more papers, and then at the very, very end, I took the COVID test. They do both. They do the nasal, and then they do the back of the throat. And there was the very last person that I talked to, I gave her my vessel, and she checked my name one more time. Then I was able to exit, get my bags, and my boss was waiting for me that whole time at that health center. So yeah, it's a very long process. Like I said, it took 4 hours, but it was very, very smooth, very organized. All the staff knew exactly what was going on, what everyone was doing. Any information, they just knew. Like, it was just so on point, and I'm like very, very impressed. I'm also very impressed with how seriously Korea has taken the virus. So bravo! Yay! Korea! All right, guys, I'm almost done with my lunch. I'm gonna finish this up, and for my dinner, I'll discuss my experience with quarantine. It is the next day. It's a bit of a cold day. It's about 48 degrees. I got something warm. I got my little Moroccan blanket with me. So these are the third packet of noodles. I got some water with me just in case. And let's give it a try. This is a very dense. These noodles are super dense. The flavor is also very like a rich beef flavor. It kind of reminds me of okay, please forgive me. I don't know how to say this word. Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire. Very dense, intense, like beefy, hearty, intense flavor. The last topic that we're going to cover today is quarantine. Anyone arriving into Korea has to quarantine for 2 weeks. If you're arriving on a very short-term visa, like a tourist visa, then you have to quarantine in a government mandated facility, which is like a hotel, and you have to pay for it. You have to cover it, which is about $1,700 for 2 weeks. And if you're coming in on a long-term visa, then you can self-isolate in a private residence. If you are sharing the apartment with a family, you're supposed to have your own bedroom and your own bathroom, and of course not have contact. Technically, you're also not supposed to have visitors if you're isolating by yourself. So I am self-isolating in the apartment that I will be living in as an English teacher in South Korea. This apartment is provided for free by the school, and for quarantine, my school is also giving me food, which is awesome. Today is, I believe, day 8 or day 7 of quarantine. So I'm technically more than halfway through. It's a Thursday now. I get out on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. And it's been pretty good. This is actually my second time quarantining. The first time was back in Morocco. I had been working at a hotel, and there was a national lockdown for 3 months. It was very hard, very hard. So this is my second time quarantining, and I spent a majority of it like learning how to make videos and learning about YouTube and playing around with the camera. And I have Netflix, which is awesome. I have a few magazines that I'm trying to read. They're like news magazines that I'm trying to read before I get out of quarantine. There is a 15-hour time difference that I had to get used to. Korea is 15 hours ahead of where I was. It actually didn't take me very long to get used to the time change, although technically it takes about 2 weeks to get over the time change. But what I did was I forced myself to stay up during the day, and then I went to sleep at night, and I did not take naps. The only kind of part that I'm trying to get used to now is waking up. I wake up really early now, like 7 in the morning. Just like spent my time entertaining myself, and I've spent a lot of time talking and catching up with like friends that I haven't had time to catch up with. So that's been really nice.